Hey, this is Meredith Elliott Powell, and you know what time it is. It is 8 a.m. Eastern, well, a little after 8 a.m. Eastern, due to a couple of difficulties. I am joined here with my partner, Mark Hunter, and it is time for Sales Logic Live.
It is. It is time for Sales Logic Live. And hey, we actually did Sales Logic Live last week. We were together, right? That was a good time, wasn't it? Good
Yeah,
time.
it was just earlier this week, Dallas, Texas. We had an amazing time. Really dove into the strategies, everything you need to know to really sell successfully in today's marketplace.
Yeah. And we had people on from Australia, Europe, and North America. So it was good. But hey, we need to talk about today's show. Today, we're going to be talking about your value proposition and is it relevant? Let me tell you some things are changing out there, and many value props just aren't working. So that's the topic we're going to dive into. Sound good to you?
It sounds good to me. Shall I start the show?
You got it.
All right, time to hit that recording and let's go. All right, once again, 8 a.m. Eastern, time for Sales Logic. Now, I'll just tell you really quickly how the show works. Every week, Mark and I come to you with a brand new show. We start off with a question from you, the audience. We discuss a hot topic. We recommend a book. And because we want you to get return on investment, we leave you with a lightning round. So, Mark, what is on tap for today?
Well, like I said, the topic is talking about your value proposition as redefining your value proposition to remain relevant. That's what we're going to dive into. The question lines up perfectly. It comes from Brian in Lake City, Florida. I am feeling the challenge of the marketplace. I'm in the home services industry. We've been on fire for the last few years, and now things are changing. How do I get business to pick back up? Or can I? Brian, those last three words are negative. Yes, you can pick business back up.
Yeah, but he is in a business that has been on fire. And so I think probably the very first thing to pay attention to is the marketplace has shifted. And when the marketplace shifts, so does your sales strategy. It needs to change with it. So it isn't that you can't be successful, because you can. I mean, Mark's absolutely right. But how you go about being successful needs to shift.
You know, there's so many things here, and it's so relevant that home services industry, Lowe's, the home improvement retailer, just announced that they said, DIY and home improvement is very much slowing down. So, Brian, you're right in track. Here's the thing you got to do, Brian. Go back to your original customers. Go back to the customers that you've done work with. Talk to them. Ask them. There's two things that you can do. One, there may be additional business that you can get from them. But two, there are also referrals that you can get from them. So you talk about redefining. There's business right there that you can get. But here's what you're going to find. You're going to find what are the next things that they're looking for? What is the extension? Because again, when we talk about home improvement services, it's like a lot of industries. It can go in a lot of different ways. And what you need to do is you need to just keep your eyes and ears open, and you'll find that next niche to play into.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, if you really want to understand how to succeed in the marketplace, especially when the marketplace shifts, go out and talk to your customers. Their complaints, their issues, their fears, their challenges, what they're focused on, that is your path to growth and profitability. That is your differentiator in the marketplace. People will do business with you because you understand them, not because they understand you.
Yeah, one thing, when you look to redefine your value proposition, don't look to take margin out of your business. I see this happening so frequently. What happens is people, I'm going to have to cut my margins. I'm going to have to cut my prices. No. This is the time that you look to say, what is that next service that I can be providing? Now, Brian, you're in a unique position. Lake City, Florida. Let's see, we're recording this in the month of almost June. That means we're coming into hurricane season.
Yeah.
So, Brian, your business could change on a dime, unfortunately, due to weather situations. And this is a heads up for anybody. You have to be aware that you may be needing to redefine your value proposition. Totally agree with that. But be eyes open. and be mindful of what's happening out there in the economy, in your geographical area, and so forth, because opportunities arise. You better be ready to jump on them.
Yeah. Happy Memorial Day to you too, Brad. It is it's just an important weekend, but a compelling value proposition is the cornerstone of successful businesses. You are absolutely right, Brian, as it distills the unique benefits and distinct advantages that make your product or service indispensable to customers, setting you apart from the competition. So well said, Brad. I think the important thing to know, and kind of what our listener is struggling with today, is that value propositions don't always remain the same. As the marketplace shifts, your value proposition needs to shift with it. So all of our listeners out there, it's a really good time to take a long look at your value proposition and ask yourself, is my value proposition relevant right now?
And when we talk about value proposition, it doesn't necessarily mean changing what you sell, your product or
Yeah,
your service.
so well
It's
said.
just how it's positioned. I'm going to give a quick example. I work with a lot of SaaS companies, software as a service company. And company I was working with a couple of years ago, we were very much focused on how to minimize storage, how to minimize the cloud storage. But then the marketplace shifted and we quickly jumped to security. Security. How do you keep that data secure? Same product, same service, but it just shifted the messaging. So be very careful. Anybody in business, don't think you got to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Many times it's just shifting how you pivot, but go back to what Meredith talked about earlier. Talk to your customers. And when you talk to your customers, don't just talk to your customers, but talk to those who didn't buy from you. Because again, the ones who didn't buy from you can probably give you almost more insight than those who did buy from you.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, Mark, I think it was so interesting that you talked a little bit, about price, and not to change your price, not to automatically come down on price to try to increase sales. I mean, what you have to find is people will pay in the marketplace for what they believe is really solving their problem. And that is what a value proposition should do. I don't know, Mark. Value propositions make me a little bit crazy, because the way that most people develop their value proposition is what they determine the value is that they are bringing to the customer. And what you think the value is kind of irrelevant.
Ding, ding, ding. That was a mic drop moment there. Because again, value is not what we think it is. It's what our customer perceives it to be. And this is why you've got to have the conversations with your customers. And you have to understand something. Customers are going to have different value propositions. In other words, what are they looking for? So again, don't take one customer's opinion. And I've seen this so often. I used to work for a company where we would do this very narrow slice of talking to just a couple of customers. And somehow we would think that those couple of customers were a indication of the entire marketplace. Big, fat mistake. So you got to have enough conversations. But here's what you're going to find. You're going to find when you're looking to redefine your value proposition, there may be several different niches that you go down. And that's okay. Because again, the economy is kind of going sideways. Remember, I'm the optimist. Mayor's the realist. It's going sideways. And what that means is you may have to explore several different niches to find the one or two that you say, this is where we're going to make bank on.
So somebody, like, you take somebody in the home services, business area, what are you thinking? Like, let's use that as an example, because I think what you're saying is so important. How can he pivot, for lack of a better way to put it? What should he be looking into now?
Well, that's a great question, because he's got to be looking into a number of different things. And Dave Sanderson puts a great comment. What's important to you and what has to happen for you to realize that? Now, think about that in the eyes of the customer, okay? Because the customer can make a decision, but there's always an upstream factor and a downstream factor. What are those upstream and downstream factors? Many times, that's what you got to find out. I'm going to share. This is such an old example, but this time of year, graduations occur. And in the United States and at the high school, it seems like there's all these graduation parties. And what I always find funny is you can drive through the neighborhood and see who is having a graduation party, because they're the ones who, the window cleaners are there. Oh, the landscapers there. Everybody's getting the house all fixed up. Wow. You see, for them, the value proposition is different than somebody who's just, gee, I got to paint my house, or gee, I got to take care of something. So you have to be able to listen to the customer and explore those respective niches, and be prepared to know that that niche you're in today might not stick around forever. It may be a very short-term window, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. So John Register, wow, powerhouse speaker just joined us. A value proposition should be what the customer perceived it to be. Bingo. Exactly. I can now say that my value proposition is the ability to shift the mindset of the employees to get on board with change in the organizations, as defined by the Talkadot survey of 2,200 people. It was eye-opening. Wow. So basically what John's saying is that he's using some software, listening to the feedback that he gets, and he may think that he's stepping on stage to give one type of keynote, but the message that is resonating with people, what they are perceiving, the value he is bringing to the table, they've spoken. And now he's using that to position himself, to uniquely position himself in the marketplace to increase his market share.
I love what he said there also, because I have a feeling his product, the message, didn't change at all. But see, what he did was he shifted how it's perceived. And then what he did was he did a survey. And again, this comes back to the thing that I talked about earlier. You got to make sure you're talking to enough people. John talked to 2,200 people. That's statistically a pretty viable, analysis. I can take that to the bank. John, you're spot on with that. See, this is the other challenge, and I'm going to share this with small business owners and big business owners. What happens many times is the marketplace changes, and there's a scram effect. I was having a conversation with the CRO yesterday, and I was talking with the CRO and a couple of his main lieutenants, and we were talking about this very thing, that the marketplace has changed. And he said, "Well, I'm under pressure because I got a board meeting coming up in a few weeks, and I got to see." You got to be cautious that you don't just jump into the wind, and whichever way the wind is blowing right now, that's the way you go. And that's what I was coaching this CRO. Step back, hold on. You're going to have to buy time, because we don't know where the marketplace is going yet. And it's going to take some analysis. It's going to take some customer calls. It's going to take some at-bats to really find out where the marketplace is at. So you got to be a little bit cautious. Don't rush too fast.
Yeah, I love that fits in really well with what John Wong is saying here, is that too often sales teams lock in and forget the sales has ebbs, flows, and tides. And learning to ride these changes is vital. You won't. I love this statement, because even though when the economy shifts, it may not be your best year on record. That's okay. I mean, you still do incredibly well. You don't always have a banner year, but just by simply changing your value proposition, you do a couple of things. You remain relevant in the marketplace. You show up solving the problem that your customer needs solved. And when the marketplace shifts back to being strong, people remember that.
Yeah. Now, remember, I'm the optimist. So I'm going to say it may not be your best year financially, but it could still be your best year, because you've repositioned your company for years to come. Now, here's the other thing, and I love what John's talking about. This is the issue. And this comes up. So many times what happens is business is in trouble. Well, our ICP, our ideal customer profile, isn't working. And suddenly you get a call from some other company, some other industry, and wow. And you suddenly you get shiny object syndrome, and you suddenly think that one phone call, that one opportunity in a different industry, different type of customer, whatever, is your new home. Caution. One sale does not make a trend, period.
kind of speaking on that on value propositions and things like that is making sure, just because we're talking about an economy starting to shift, and our listener is in the housing industry. Now, you would have to have your head in the sand if you don't think the housing industry is going to struggle some, over the next year or so. So do you have complementary ICPs? Do you have complementary ideal customer profiles? I think attorneys are some of the greatest examples of this. Anytime I work with law firms, they work in bankruptcy and they work in real estate. What's the idea behind that? Because when the real estate market is hot, the economy is hot and things are growing. The moment that the economy starts to shift, they move all those junior attorneys over into the bankruptcy areas because they know that they know bankruptcies. That part of the law is going to shift and going to change. So it's a matter of just saying, how is the market going to move? What could I do to really, in the home improvement space, you may want to be set up to service new homes and builds, and then doing repairs and service, because there are balance to those that help you out when the economy shifts.
See, what Mayor just talked about, it's the same service. You're just positioning it differently. And this is what's so key. When you think about your value proposition, you have to think about how are you going to be able to communicate it to create a point of difference with your customer. Go back to the question, the question from Brian in Lake City, home improvement services. That is, there's 10,000 people with a pickup truck and a van that can probably compete in that service in his area. So what does he have to do? He has to be able to create that little piece of distinction that allows him to separate himself from others. The point of distinction many times is going to come from the conversations, go back to what we talked about at the beginning, to your existing customers. Listen to them because they're the ones who understand you. They know what you can do. They know what you can't do. And they're going to be the most relevant ones to be able to help you redefine. And it's not like you're asking them, hey, would you help me redefine my value proposition? No, it's talking to them about and asking them a couple of questions. One, talk to me a little bit about how you appreciated and how you really benefited from what we were able to do. Two, ask them, hey, what was the criteria you were kind of going through as to why you actually selected us? What was the reasoning? Three, why did you even think you wanted to do the project? Why did you think? You ask them those three questions, and it's going to begin to help point little trends, little indicators that, okay, now maybe I can begin to run with this. Maybe I can't. But those people are going to give you your best commentary with which to build your revised value proposition off of.
I love that John Register has given us all a chat GPT to go into your chat GPT and say, what might be a value proposition for, and put your name in there and see what pops up. John Wong, you've got the mic drop moment. I absolutely love this, and I think it needs to become the quote for the podcast today. Value proposition done right identifies your organization as a solution provider versus a product mover, which is so well said, and which is exactly what you want to be.
Yeah, because we sell an outcome. We don't sell a product. We don't sell if you sell a product or a service, you are one of 10,000 people out there. It's what is that distinct proposition? There was a comment that I saw flash through in there, and John Register put up there the name of our good friend, Dr. Nito Quabain at High Point University. That is there's the quote. That is a lesson in understanding value proposition. Nito Quabain, High Point University. It's a 4-year liberal arts college university. I mean, there's thousands of them out there. But Dr. Nito Quabain has been able to position to a very defined niche and put a product together, again, not unlike what other schools can do, but been able to deliver it in a manner that creates a significantly different outcome. And it allows the school to attract a different type of student which goes on to achieve a different type of outcome. Which, what does that do? This becomes a perpetual motion machine because you understand your value proposition. And yet, you know what's interesting? High Point University's value proposition has changed over the 12 or 13 years he's been president there. Every few years, it shifts, it wiggles a little bit because they got their eye to the marketplace, incoming students and their parents. That is understanding the marketplace.
All right, Mark, we better hit the book.
Wow.
We are burning time.
Yeah. Okay. I got caught in a rant there. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, so what are we focused on today from a book perspective?
Well, the book today is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Now, if you don't know Donald Miller, you've had your head in the sand. Go to Amazon right now and get the book Building, because what he talks about is really building a story brand. It's creating that messaging that the customer can understand. Because again, you can describe your product, doesn't mean diddly squat. That's a technical term to the customer. So he walks through the entire and literally he walks you through the entire process in the book. It is an absolute gold book.
Yeah, I've read the book twice. Donald Miller's Story Brand, really great formula that you can use. All right, what's up on the lightning round?
Well, the lightning round. Put your hand on the buzzer. Get ready. Best ways to keep your value proposition relevant. You're on the clock. Go.
Number 1, pay attention to the marketplace and how the marketplace is shifting.
2, listen to and talk to your customers and your old customers.
Yeah, I'd say listen to customer complaints. Really listen to what people are complaining about in the marketplace for your industry. What isn't working? What isn't being served?
Look at what competitors are doing, not for what they're doing, but for what they're not doing.
Do what John Register did and do a survey. Go out to a large number of customers and just ask what's important, what matters to them, what makes them choose one person, service, or organization over another.
Don't allow one customer to suddenly set your trend as to where you're going with the value proposition. That's shiny object syndrome, and you're going to crash and burn real quick.
Yeah, pay attention to whether your sales are increasing or they're decreasing. If they're decreasing, chances are something's wrong with your value proposition, or it could use a tweak, or it could use an upgrade.
When you change your value proposition, don't think this is the time to give up margin. No, it's not. It's called repositioning to protect and grow your margin.
Yeah, make sure that your value proposition uses the words that your customers use. Don't try to make it, fancy or high level or creative. Just try to make it real, relevant, and authentic. And so use the words that have been given to you.
Great. I'll share one more. You share one more, and we'll close it down. But hey, let's put that comment up there from Catherine Brown, because that was a great comment. We'll take a side note. She writes, "How fun that you highlighted building a story brand today. This is a very helpful framework that forces you to speak about the customer's challenges before you talk about how you help." Yes, I call it them before me. It is excellent. Great endorsement for the book. And that's the whole premise, because here's the final thing that I was going to share. Don't think for a moment that you need to change your product or your service. What you're changing is how you message it with the customer.
Yeah, the last thing I'm going to say is make sure that your value proposition isn't the same as all of your competitors. Because if you have the same value proposition than they do, you're not competing in the marketplace. You're just hoping that that customers choose you over the competition with no real reason to do it.
Spot on with that. Hey, we want to say thank you for listening to Sales Logic this week. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. I'll tell you what, we love reviews on Spotify and Apple Music, et cetera, please. If we've helped you earn a single dollar, please consider telling a friend about our show, because it's how we grow when we help you grow. I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meridith Elliott Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the sale becomes logical.
A couple of things here. Number 1, I want to point out we're recording this Memorial Day weekend, and so well said, John Register. General Timothy Maude Major Ron Millam and Command Sergeant Major Larry Strickland. They're the ones that John is citing that he remembers who were killed in the 9/11 attack on the Pentagon. I think it's such an important weekend to remember that we have what we have. We have the ability to sell in this country because so many that have sacrificed for us. Also want to mention, Mark and I have the Sales Logic Mastermind coming out of Sales Logic Live. We've got quite a few members jumping into that. We're going to put that out in the show notes. We would love to have you join us. With that, I hope everybody sells a lot, has a great weekend, and remembers those who made our lives possible. Thanks again.